that we have. So we have our intuition, and we also have that sense of knowing. And it's the intuition and knowing that I feel right now are so important when there's such a lot of information and misinformation out there, to tap into your own sense of knowing and your own intuition. Then, of course, in terms of intelligence, we have the brain in our head, and you also have a brain inside your heart. Now, yes, you heard me right, you have a brain in your heart. Now, of course, it doesn't look anything like the brain in your head because, well, it wouldn't fit. But in 1994, so actually quite recently, they identified that your heart indeed does have certain types of cells that mean it has an intelligence. And if you go all the way back to ancient Egypt and the mummification process, you'll discover that in the mummification process, they used to discard the brain as worthless, but they always made sure that the body was intact with the heart. They realized that the heart was truly important. And actually, the heart has a huge electromagnetic field that's much larger than the electromagnetic field that emits from your brain. And I'll talk a little bit more about that electromagnetic field a little bit later in this webinar. So you've got the brain in your head, you've got your 7 senses, you've got the brain in the heart, you've also got gut intelligence. So even your gut, you know, it'll grumble and growl, or some people say they have a gut feel, but when it grumbles and growls, it could be telling you that maybe you've eaten something that's a little bit off or a little bit dodgy. And finally, you've got cells. You're made up of billions and billions of different cells. And even a single cell has the ability to make decisions in unforeseen difficulties and to repair itself. Not only that, but each cell in your body holds the blueprint for who you are physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Now, what this means is each time you learn something new or read a new book or take in new information, your cells, you, are constantly being upgraded. Now, all this is happening inside of you. So the question is, how can you harness all that potential that is you to align it with your mission and vision? Not only that, how can you take all that potential that's inside of you, activate it, so you not only impact your life in a positive way, but you act as a positive impact to those around you. And often we feel helpless. It's like, how can I make a difference? But as we go through this session, I'm going to show you that you really can make a difference. So I'm just going to put up a couple of slides on the screen share here. So the 3 areas that I'm going to be covering very quickly today is, first, to discover what lies beneath the hard drive of you. Second, we are in challenging times. But you've probably heard that saying, it's chaos or crisis that creates evolution. So how can you harness that energy to trigger a shift, not only in yourself, but a shift in others? And third, ignite that morphogenetic field so it creates a ripple effect, a positive ripple effect out into the world. So if you join this webinar expecting to get sort of 10 tips on how to stay positive, no, you can trust your intuition, you can trust your sense of knowing to do that. I want to help you tap into your genius, that genie within you, and go a little bit further. So let's start with discovering what lies beneath the hard drive of you. And I'm going to ask you a question, so get your fingers ready on the keyboard to type in your response. What do you think is the biggest barrier to change? What do you think is the biggest barrier to change? Now, the reason I ask that, as you type in, the reason that I ask that is we're digging deeper into the 21st century. New information, new technology, the pace of change, it's absolutely huge. So I also hear people at this time say, oh, can't wait for things to go back to normal. Oh, I can't wait till all this is over and we go back to the old way of doing things. Well, truthfully, we're not going to go back to the old way. There isn't We're not going to go back to the old normal. We have the opportunity to step forward into a new way of being. So even though most people know it's not going to go back to normal, there's this resistance to change. So what do you think creates the biggest barrier to shifts? And I'm looking to see if I can see the responses that you've put in there, if you've typed them in. So maybe
I can just read the responses for you.
Thank you.
So we have egos.
Yes.
Richard says insights. Gigi says fear. We have society's expectations. Sonam says we ourselves. Dr. Hanadi says fear of leaving the comfort zone.
Yeah.
Jita says me, myself. Gadar says fear of leaving the comfort zone. Sarah says resistance. Julie Lewis says limiting beliefs / fear. Joe says not being flexible. Dashana says our values. Ewa says fear. And Katrina says fear of the unknown.
Okay, well, look, you're all right in terms that they're really valuable barriers to resistance. They're all valuable, they're all true, but none of them are the biggest barrier to change. So let me just share what that biggest barrier is, and you might be surprised. I mean, some of you are on the right track, but the biggest barrier to change is actually your very own conscious mind. And the reason I say that is because the conscious mind is constantly analyzing, criticizing, and judging everything that's going on, whether you know it or not. It's reactive, it's judgmental. So what you read in the news, what you see on social media, it can impact you. But the conscious mind is hardwired to criticize, analyze, and judge, whether it's what I'm wearing, what I'm saying, what other people are saying and doing. It's judgmental. So think of it for a moment like a computer screen and a keyboard. You can type information in and it appears on the screen and you respond and react to it. Or information just appears on the screen and you respond and react to it, as you do, say, a newspaper article or the media. So the fact is, nothing appears on the screen. You can't type anything in unless that screen, unless that keyboard is connected to a hard drive. The hard drive is essentially your unconscious mind. And your unconscious mind is basically a recording and playback device that forms the habit mind. And not only that, it's hugely more powerful than the conscious mind. They estimate that 95% of the time, you're operating from programs and patterns stored at the unconscious level on your hard drive, 95% of the time. So the question to ask yourself is, are the patterns and programs that you're operating from moving you forward towards what you want, or are they moving you in the other direction? Because here's the other thing, the unconscious mind is responsible for all learning, all behavior, and all change. Now, in longer sessions, I usually go into more detail on all of those, but let's just talk about change, particularly because of the times that we're in at the moment. So, have you ever been on maybe a program and it's been really good while you're there and you feel that you're making leaps and bounds forward in your own life, and then you either go back to your normal place of work or go back home, and within a few days, everything's gone back to normal? Why does that happen? And then maybe you make yourself new resolutions, but 2 weeks into January, those are long gone, being forgotten. So why is it so difficult to change? Well, here's the thing. The now that you are experiencing right now actually registered at the unconscious level about half a second ago. Let me say that again because it's important. The now that you're experiencing right now actually registered at the unconscious level half a second ago. Now, that may seem like something I just made up just on the spur at the moment, but it actually came about through 15 years of research by a neuroscientist called Benjamin Levy. Why is it important to you? Well, let's say in the days when we were allowed out freely that you're driving along, somebody cuts you up in traffic and you get angry, you get upset, you swear at them, you curse. And after you've calmed down, you say to yourself, do you know, the next time that happens, I'm not going to get upset. I'm going to remain neutral. I'm going to remain calm. That's what you tell yourself. 15 minutes later, guess what? You get cut up in traffic and you get angry, you get upset, you curse, you get stressed. How come when you told yourself you were going to remain calm, cool, and in control? What's going on there? Well, the challenge is the information being cut up in traffic hits the unconscious level first. So you respond and react based on the programs and patterns that you've got stored there, programs and patterns that may have been installed when you were a child from your ancestral line, from your culture, your religion, what was going on in the world when you were growing up. So again, are your programs and patterns current? Are they up to date? Do you need an upgrade like you upgrade your computer? So often when I work with individuals, organizations, or teams, the first thing is to start recognizing these patterns and programs. So it's a little bit like floundering around in a dark room and wondering why you keep tripping up. And then you switch on the light and you can see what's tripping you up. And then, of course, you have a choice. You can switch off the light and stumble again, or you can move the wires, or you can reinstall new lighting so that you see, hear, feel, and experience the world in a whole different way. Now, we are creatures of patterns and habits. And actually, it's our patterns in thinking and behavior that create our response to circumstances, not the circumstances themselves. So again, let me give you some examples of this. How many of you wake up with an alarm clock on a regular basis? If you've got your camera on, you can just put up your hand, I can see you. But if you wake up with an alarm clock, think of the alarm clock as the trigger. And then we have that conditioned response. So for some of you, the conditioned response could be switch on the snooze button, grab another 15. For others, the alarm goes off, you leap out of bed and greet the day. So that's a trigger response. When you drive, think of traffic lights. When the traffic light is red, that's a trigger that tells you the conditioned response is stop. Whereas when the traffic light turns to green, it's a trigger that tells you go, or beep your horn at the person in front of you. And then in organizations, what about when a meeting is called? Do you think, oh my God, how wonderful, another meeting, an opportunity to share my creative ideas? Or more often than not, it's like, another board meeting. I always think it's such a great reason they're called board meetings, because many of them are. And here's the other thing that you need to know. You, as an individual, are also a trigger that elicits a specific response in other people. So whether people see you, hear your name, or hear you speak, what's the conditioned response you elicit when people hear about you? Is it, ooh, oh no? Or is it, oh yes? And more importantly, what conditioned response would you like to trigger in other people? Now, for many of you, you'll know that conditioned response is nothing new. It sort of dates back to the early 1900s when we have Dr. Bill Twitmar, a medical doctor who came across conditioned response. But really, it's probably more assigned to Ivan Pavlov. And conditioned response, of course, forms the foundation of most successful marketing campaigns. But it was Ivan Pavlov who, let me just get the share screen up again. Ivan Pavlov, who did his famous experiment with the salivating dogs. Some of you may know this, some of you may not, but basically, in a nutshell, what he did was he had a pack of dogs, and when they were hungry, he'd show them a big, fat, healthy steak, and they'd see the steak and they'd start to salivate. When they started to salivate, he'd ring a bell. Now, he didn't just do this once, he did it again and again and again. Every time the dogs were hungry, he'd show them big, fat, juicy steak, they'd salivate, he'd ring the bell. He did this so many times that it got to the stage where he could ring the bell and the dogs would salivate, even if there was no meat there. How come? Because they equated the bell with the meat, so it elicited the same conditioned response. And that's what Ivan Pavlov published in his research in the 1930s. And it's also when behavioral psychologists sat up and took notice, because they realized as human beings, we are also lean, mean, conditioned machines. And as I said, this forms the foundation of many marketing campaigns. So for instance, often a company will ask a celebrity to endorse their product because certain feelings are assigned to that celebrity. That celebrity makes people feel good, and they want people to feel good about their product. So they equate the two as being the same. Probably the most famous one that most of you may recall is back in the day when Pepsi got Michael Jackson or Britney Spears to appear in their ads because they saw that kids got into a heightened state of excitement when they watched Michael Jackson or Britney Spears in concert. And they wanted the kids to feel that way about Pepsi. So what did they do? The foundation of their campaign was basically to film Britney or Michael Jackson in concert at the peak of the experience. What they'd do is they'd pick up a bottle or a can of Pepsi. Sorry, I'm only into water these days. They'd take a drink, and then that formed the meat of their campaign that was repeated all through the media. So are we conditioned by the media? Absolutely. There's a reason it's called television programming. And I would seriously ask you at this time to question what you choose to put in your pie. What have you watched in the past? And I know I switched off from mainstream television quite many years ago because I didn't want to put that in my pie. So what are you choosing to watch? What are you being programmed with continually? And particularly at the moment when we see the same stories repeated in every single media channel. Quite interesting. So the question now to ask is it possible to teach a dog a new trick? Is it possible, no matter how young, old, or middle-aged you may be, is it possible to change that conditioned response? Is it possible to create neurons, pull them apart and get them to start firing and wiring in a completely new way? And the good news is yes. And this is where the field of neuroplasticity is opening the door to new possibilities about how we learn, how the brain creates new neurological connections. I find this field so exciting. And you know, when I speak to my mother, who's 89, my mother looks absolutely fantastic. Katrina, Jules, you'll know my mum looks absolutely amazing. We communicate through Skype and through other media channels through her iPad. And I always remember my brother saying, when we got her an iPad for her 80th birthday, her first iPad, by the way, he said, she'll never use it. We get her these gadgets and she never uses it. And I said, she will, because she's been over here on holiday and she's literally kidnapped my iPad and absolutely loves it. So it doesn't matter whether you're young or old, you can learn something new, and neuroplasticity proves this. Interesting study done by a behavioral psychologist called Alan Richardson. This was in Australia. And what he did was he took a basketball team and he split the basketball team into 3 groups. Excuse me. First group was allowed to physically practice popping the ball into the net. Great. Second group was allowed no physical practice, but they were allowed to sit and visualize, to mentally rehearse and to visualize popping the ball into the net. Third group were not allowed to do any visualization or mental rehearsal. They were not allowed any physical practice. A month later, the results were absolutely astounding. What they discovered was the group who'd had no physical practice, but had only mentally been rehearsing and visualizing popping the ball into the net, were as good as the group who had done physical practice. So what this shows us is that we have such a capacity within us to literally tap into all this intelligence, to be more than we thought we can be. So what I'd like to do is just a quick experiment, rather than you just sit and listen. So what I'd like you to do is, wherever you are, so let me just stop the share for a minute. Whatever you are, just stretch your arms out like this. So I know as my hands go near the camera, my hands get really big. Anyway, so take your arms out like this, okay? So about shoulder level, and then just turn your right palm up to face the ceiling. Okay, so you've got both arms out like this, and then the right hand is just turned up like this. Now, close your eyes. So if you're feeling a little sleepy, if you're in Europe and it's lunchtime, a bit sleepy, if you're here in the UAE, maybe not a little afternoon snooze, so just close your eyes. And what I want you to do is to imagine on your right hand, I want you to imagine a big, heavy book. Not just one, but maybe 3 volumes of a big, heavy book. And it's so heavy, it's weighing your hand down, down, down. You can just feel your right arm going heavier, heavier, and heavier. Now, tied around your left wrist is a little piece of string. And attached to that string, there's some helium balloons. And you can feel your left arm just floating up, 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 feeling lighter, 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 while the right arm just feels so heavy, it's aching now, it's just going down, down, down. Now, wherever you are, just open your eyes and look at your hands. Now, some of you are going to have a big difference like this, some there's just going to be a little difference. But chances are your right arm is feeling a little bit tired, it's sort of aching a little, there's a little difference. Yes. So just shake your arms out, just shake them out. You can put your hands down now. Now, you know there never were any books on your right hand. You also know there were no helium balloons attached to your left wrist. I just gave you that suggestion for about 10, 15 seconds. And for many of you, it elicited a shift, it elicited a change. What does this show you? It shows you that you are indeed suggestible. And so my question would be, what has been the result of the suggestions that you've been giving yourself in the last month or so as we've gone through this global challenge? What have been the result of the suggestions you've been giving yourself over the last year, the last 5 years, or the last 10 years? Are the suggestions that you've been giving yourself, are they again moving you forward towards what you want and opening you up to new possibilities? Or are they shutting you down? Because what you've just proven to yourself and to me is you are suggestible. You know, I often work with, in the field of hypnosis, and you often get people who say, oh, I can't be hypnotized. But actually what they're really saying, all hypnosis is really self-hypnosis. They're saying, I can't follow suggestions. So, you know, if I ask you to close your eyes, you can choose to accept that suggestion and close your eyes, but I can't reach through the screen and go and close all your eyes. You have to choose to accept the suggestions. So when it comes to what you're watching, what you're hearing, what are you choosing to accept, which then ultimately creates your model of the world, your reality? So is it possible? Let me go back to share the screen. Is it possible to create new pathways to literally rewire your unconscious mind to create new neurological connections? Absolutely, through the power of your mind, through the language that you use. And as I said earlier, I work in the field of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy, and hypnosis. And there are many, particularly in NLP, many quick change techniques that help people pull those wires apart and put them together in a more valuable way so they don't need to necessarily trip you up. So it's possible to create new neurological pathways. And speaking of pathways, one of the other fields that I work in is I often run firewalks. Yes, not fireworks, firewalks. I teach people to walk across burning hot coal of about 1700 degrees Fahrenheit. In fact, Jules was helping me just a couple of weeks ago. We were in Abu Dhabi. Well, it's probably about 2 months ago we were running a firewalk up there. And just before all this started, we had the opportunity to run a firewalk here in Dubai as well for a wonderful, wonderful team. people often ask me, why? Why do you run firewalks? Is it just for the fun of it? Because believe it or not, it is a very fun event. But there's actually a deeper level meaning that resonates with me and the purpose that I choose to run these breakthrough experiences. Research shows that by the age of 35, most people are already set in terms of how they respond, react, and emote in any situation. It's as if we've got a kind of menu of these behaviors, these emotions, this is the language that I use on a regular basis. So it's almost like our programs and patterns that in any situation, we've already decided how we're going to respond and react. You know, it's how we're programmed, what's stored at that unconscious level. So that means if we are already set, 95% set by the age of 35, it begs the question, how do you ever learn anything new if you're kind of like set in that box? So this is the reason that I run the firewalks, because what it does is it puts people into chaos, it puts people into crisis, because when you stand in front of those coals, it's like, holy moly, she wasn't kidding, they really are hot. You know, even when you're seeing them from afar, you think, no, they're not that hot. But when you stand right by them, it's like, holy moly, they're hot, she wasn't kidding. And it brings up all your fears, all your issues. It's like oil floating to the surface of water, ready for you to deal with them. But here's the thing, when people do walk across those coals, it creates new neurological connections really, really quickly. And it begs the question, if I can do that, what else can I do in my life? And here we are, in a situation that none of us have ever experienced before, unless you're from a country that's been through war or famine or a major disaster, and many of you may have been through something like that. But where we've got country after country after country putting us into lockdown and telling us what we can and what we can't do and what we might have to do, it puts people into a space where they haven't got any behavior, emotions, or language to know how to respond to it. So some of you may have seen this when you've maybe posted something on Facebook, the reaction and response, or if somebody sees you and you forgot to put your mask on and people reporting people, it can bring out the best in people, and it can also bring out the worst in people. And what I want for you is to bring out the best in you so that you can tap into all that potential, because we are so much more than we think we are. Some of the books that I remember reading from the late 1800s were the masters of the Far East and the miracles the masters from the Far East did. It was a group that traveled around Tibet, India, Pakistan, all those countries, and met many of living masters who were able to walk on water, walk through walls. And what that does, like the firewalk, it opens you up to the possibility that you are more than what you've been taught. Because most of us think we're free, but we're actually kept in a box of, you know, what we've been taught, what the society conditions us in, what social media says is proper, our life experiences. So we think we're free, but we're actually just pushing against the edge of this wall, this boundary around us. And now is the time to sort of really liberate ourselves and break free. But when people go through experiences like this, like the firewalk or the situation that we're in now, it puts us into chaos. Now, chaos and crisis is actually what often creates evolution, creates our biggest growth. And so I want to talk a bit about energy as we go into how we can harness the energy that's created through chaos to trigger that shift. Because in the past, we may have had an emotional crash, a financial fall, we may have had situations in our life, and I know some of you on this webinar have had situations that have been uncomfortable at the time, but as you look back, that chaos, that crisis has propelled you forward in an unprecedented way. So let's just talk about energy for a while, and panic not. Some of you are going, oh, is this the fluffy bit? Not too much, but basically, We are all energy. Everything in this universe is made up of energy. So whatever you're sitting on, the bed you're lying on, the sofa you're sitting on, the chair you're sitting on, energy. If there's a desk in front of you, it's energy. The people that you're seeing, it's energy. If you're seeing colors, the blue on the screen, blue or violet is a particular frequency, the red at the bottom. Red is a particular frequency, so it's energy vibrating at a specific frequency, as are we. So we see energy in what you're seeing around you, that's all energy. We hear energy, music, sound, it's energy, my voice, energy. We can feel energy as well, but again, these are the senses that most people have begun to ignore. So let me give you a quick experience of this. So what I want you to do is just to rub your hands really vigorously together, really vigorously like this. Hard as you can, as quick as you can. Really vigorously, vigorously, vigorously. Good, and then stop and hold them apart. And what you'll feel is it's a little bit like a magnet. That's energy. That gives you a visceral experience of energy. Now that's between your hands. But our whole body is energy as well, vibrating at a specific frequency. So let me give you another experience. And for this, wherever you are, I'd like you to stand up. I can see some of you lazing back on beds and sofas. Time to stand up. So I'm going to go off to the side so you don't just sort of get a bird's eye view of my tummy, but I am dressed. So if you can all stand up wherever you are, and what I want you to do is I want you to shake. I want you to shake your hands like this vigorously. I want you to shake your shoulders up and down. I want you to shake your head and then bounce up and down on your heels, on your knees. That's right. Come on, Sonam. I can see you sitting down. Come on. Everybody get up, move around. Yeah, we get very complacent of sitting down. So just shake, 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 shake. So I call this the bounce and shake, but actually, keep going, keep going. It's exercise from Qigong, great to do first thing in the morning, shake out all the sort of knots from the night's sleep. Okay, now just stop. Wherever you are, just stop and stay perfectly still. And what you'll feel is the energy racing round your body. So you can take a seat, and I hope that gives you an experience, a visceral experience, that you are indeed energy. Here's the other thing about energy. Your thoughts are energy. Your emotions are energy. Your words are energy. All vibrating at a specific frequency. I was listening to Dr. Bruce Lipton on a YouTube video recently. And, you know, we used to think thoughts are in our head. And that's because when you use an EEG, they put probes on your head and they measure the brain activity. So they figure that thoughts are in the head. But now they've created another machine. It's called a MEG. It's the short version. The long version would be very difficult for me to pronounce. So it's a MEG. But so you've got the EEG, which gives probes on the head, but the MEG has probes outside of you. It doesn't touch you, but it can still measure the activity of your thoughts, which highlights that our thoughts are out there, that we are, through our thoughts are going out into the unified field, and we are emitting our thoughts out there, and that means if we're in negative thoughts, we're impacting others. Not only that, I shared earlier about the electromagnetic field of the heart. The electromagnetic field of the heart far exceeds the electromagnetic field of the brain. And what this means is when you're feeling in fear, when you're sad, when you're demotivated, that's like your frequency, that's your signature going out into the world. And you all know this is true because you've all walked into a room and gone, oh, I get a chill here, it has a bad vibe. Or you walk into another place and you say, oh gosh, the atmosphere here is wonderful. Or you can tell when somebody's in a bad mood. They don't have to say anything. Even if you can't see them, you can just tell, you get that vibe. So we all organisms read vibration. It's just that human beings, we've got a little bit lazy at reading vibration. Now here's the thing. whatever you're emitting into the outside world is what you're creating. So the question is, what are you creating in your outer world? Are you creating harmony, or are you creating dissonance by the frequency that you're emitting? And if you want to create a shift, you cannot create a shift operating from the same thoughts, the same emotions, the same language, the same frequency. You've got to change the frequency, because your outer world is in resonance with the frequency that you're emitting. Now, I have a feeling this is going to highlight some questions for some of you, because you're going to say, what, Carol, does that mean that I've created all of this? Well, you look at the collective consciousness that we are all tapped into. And, you know, what we do to the world, we poison our food is toxic, our drink is toxic, our air is toxic from chemtrails, from cloud seeding, animal abuse, children abuse, the way we're all about, you know, win, that means somebody loses, this separation. So if you think carefully, this is the importance of you shifting your frequency, transforming your thoughts, your feelings, and holding yourself to a highest level. And that's where it's this chaos and the energy of chaos, because chaos is a disruptive fuel. It's chaos that creates the shift. And I want to introduce you to, I'm going to show you a little video clip. It's probably about 30 seconds. And it comes from Dr. Hans Jenny from the field of cymatics. Now, cymatics shows you how vibration frequency impacts matter. So what you're going to see is there's a tray, a metal tray with some salt and sand on it, and they key in a frequency. And you'll see the salt and sand go into chaos, and then it aligns with the new frequency. Here it is. So upping the frequency, look at the chaos, and then it aligns. And one more, I think. Increasing the frequency of the chaos, and then it aligns. So did you see from that that, you know, there's that momentary chaos before it aligns with the new frequency, and you also saw the beautiful, beautiful geometry that's created with sound. And, you know, this is one of the reasons that sound healing is so beautiful. So I've got this beautiful 7-metal Tibetan bowl, and if you get one of these big ones, you can have literally a sound sandwich. So great photo opportunity there. And I get all the vibration inside. So this is why sound healing is so important. And I also use the crystal bowl. So I have a beautiful, beautiful crystal bowl here. Isn't it beautiful? And so you see, everything is energy, everything is frequency. And, you know, sometimes, you know, I'm speaking to groups and encouraging them to sort of stir the pot and create chaos. We don't have to do that. We're already in crisis. We're already in chaos. So we know that it's creating a shift. Except you have the opportunity to tap into your potential and create a positive and powerful shift. This is the reason that there's so many huge group meditations going on, because that's putting those thoughts, that emotion, that peace out into the unified field. Now, here's what happens when you create that shift. I think it was Kennedy back in the day who said it's a rising tide that lifts all the ships. But you go into the third phase, which is igniting the morphogenetic field. What do I mean by this? Well, let me just take a few minutes to talk about monkeys. I'm going to open up for questions in just a few minutes. So some of you may be thinking, monkeys, bit of monkey business. Well, back in the 1950s, there was an island off Japan called Koshima, and some of you may have heard of this. Now, I'm not sure how true this story is. It's often told, and whether it's true or not doesn't really matter because it really highlights the point. But these scientists were studying the behavior of these monkeys. And every day when they went to the island, they used to take a big truckload of sweet potatoes and empty them on the beach. And the monkeys loved the sweet potatoes. What they didn't like was the sand and grit that got on the sweet potatoes. That was until one monkey, a very young monkey, and ladies, apparently a female, who knows, but she took the sweet potato, popped it in the sea, washed it from the sand and grit, and ate it. And she taught that technique to other monkeys in her family, who taught it to other monkeys, who taught it to other monkeys, who taught it to other monkeys, until one day, the scientists arrived and every single monkey on that island was taking the sweet potato and washing it first in the sea. Not only that, but monkeys on a neighboring island, where no monkeys from Kashima could have got across or swum or anyway got there, were doing exactly the same thing. What is this? This is the morphogenetic field that Rupert Sheldrake talks about. He's a biologist and an author. Rupert Sheldrake says that when individuals of a species come together, it creates a group mind. And we see examples of this all the time in nature. So for those of you in the days when we were allowed to go to the beach, when you used to go scuba diving, you'd see a school of fish, and when one moves, they all move. Or you go outside and you look at a flock of birds, when one changes direction, they all change direction. So really the morphogenetic field is the manifestation of genius. And it starts with you tapping into your genius, being the upside of the downside, because you do have the power to create that shift. How? Well, even a single spark can create the greatest of bonfires. But right at the beginning, I asked you to smile. What happens when you smile? Other people smile back, right? So it starts with you, and it could be as simple as a smile. So as I said, this, to me, the morphogenetic field and creating that ripple effect where we can impact others in a positive way is so powerful when you often feel alone and think, how do I make a difference? But here's another scenario. Let's say you set yourself a goal. Maybe you want a new job. But here's the deal. If you get a new job, it means somebody else got promoted, left, or set up their own business. Which means if somebody left and got a new job, it means somebody else got a new job, left, or set up a business. If somebody set up a business, it means they employed some other people and created new opportunities who then got promoted. If you follow the line, just you achieving your one goal impacts thousands and thousands of people. So it goes back to the old metaphors. When a butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the world, a butterfly flaps its wings on the other side of the world. That's probably more profound than we originally thought. So I'm going to leave you an opportunity right now to type in your questions, and I'll look at them, and so will Iffy. So I've probably got about 7 minutes for questions, maybe 5 minutes to take some questions. So as you start typing in those questions, I'm going to just do a quick review of what we've covered. So first of all, I talked about you are so intelligent, from the brain in your head, the brain in your heart, gut intelligence, right down to single cell intelligence. Not just 5 senses, you have 7 senses, and this is the opportunity to start tapping into that sense of intuition, that sense of knowing, seeing what sits well with you, and discovering and noticing those patterns. How you're running on your hard drive, are the programs and patterns that you're operating your hard drive from, are they helping you or hindering you? Do you need to switch on the light and see what's tripping you up? Because we are creatures of patterns and habits. We're subject to conditioned response. And even you are a response for somebody else, a conditioned response. When they see you, when they hear your name, when they hear you speak, do you elicit, oh no, or oh yes? So here we are in challenging times. And these could be termed the worst of times, Or could it really be the possibility of the biggest transformation, the biggest shift that we could possibly imagine, and our very purpose for being and incarnating into this space-time reality? So we can harness the energy, because chaos is a disruptive fuel. We can harness that to trigger a shift and be operating from a higher frequency, a different vibration, because when we shift, we ignite a morphogenetic field in other people. Our thoughts, our emotions, our energy goes out into the field, into the unified field. What are you choosing to send out into the unified field? So, Iffy, can you let me know if we've got any questions going, or if I can see the questions? I'm just looking to see where I can maybe find the questions. Iffy,
Amazing.
Okay, Iffy, can you tell me which button I press to see the questions at the side?
Yes.
Maybe if I stop share.
So everyone, you can put your questions in the chat now.
Somebody's saying they love the crystal bowls.
Yes.
Yes, they're lovely. Also, I've got some beautiful Koshi bells as well that are beautiful to use. Any questions, though, is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. At the moment, there are no questions. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask.
I'll address something that I touched on earlier when I said that, you know, one of the frames in NLP is cause and effect, that we are the creators of the outside world. And I feel that's such a topical frame for success right now. And often people say, what, you mean I caused all this? Well, I'm not saying necessarily that you specifically caused it, but as I said earlier, we all have to take some responsibility of what we're putting out into the unified field. But the fact is, if you're on the effect side of the equation, and when you're on the effect side of the equation, you're a victim. It's like, it's not my fault. But when you say it's not my fault, or you blame other people, you're helpless. You have no power. The moment you move on to the cause side of the equation, you're back in the driver's seat and saying, okay, so what can I do about the situation? How can I get myself back in the driver's seat and be the upside of the downside? So that's where it's important to know that, you know, we all make a difference in our own way. I'm seeing a question just come in. It says, it's from Joe. Many new companies or business began during the Great Depression. Oh, this is a lovely, lovely comment. Many new companies or businesses began during the Great Depression or war. How does one get that kind of direction during this chaotic period? Joe, it's easy to think that there are no opportunities. And we can say in the age of technology, people's jobs are disappearing. But maybe what's actually happening is new opportunities are opening that maybe we cannot see yet. And within any crisis, there are businesses that are no longer valid or current, and there are also going to be businesses that really rock. So I would say the manufacturers of face masks and gloves are really making a killing at the moment.
Yeah.
They're doing well. So it also pushes you, Joe, to be creative in a way that you may not have been creative before. So I've seen so many people forced to take programs online and do them so well and so beautifully that it opens up opportunities to create interaction and engagement in a whole new way. Now, I also appreciate that one person's model of the world and experience of this situation can be very, very difficult for other people who have maybe lost their job and are not in that flow of abundance. You know, I always think it's a bit like a circle. And, you know, we're all in this illusion of separateness. It really is a time to come together in unity, that we are all connected. But if you have a circle, one person's this end of the circle, and that's their perspective and model of the world. Another person is right the other side of that circle and sees the world in a completely different way. And so experiences like this with chaos force you to shift and change. And here's the other thing I would say. Even if you look back in the past and you speak to some of the most successful entrepreneurs, they'll tell you the reason they set up their business was because they were fired.
Mm.
And it forced them to do something that maybe they'd been thinking about. So this is the perfect opportunity to be involved in mastermind groups with mentoring to tickle that potential in you and open the door to discover gifts and talents that you may have kept hidden for a long, long time. And this is the power of working with, I know on the call earlier I saw we had Trisha Evans, who's just the most amazing coach. She does incredible flip charts. She really is the flip chart queen. Yes, I can see she's still online, but you know, this is exactly what she does, to help people open the door to new possibilities in times like this, where you may have the opportunity to unleash other facets of yourself that you never knew were there. You discover new strengths. And I'm just looking to see for other questions. Sarah, yeah, created yet another business plan during this time. Somebody else doing the affirming and visualization exercises. I've got some visualization and meditations on one of my websites, the nlpmatrix.me. Also, my YouTube channel, I have some free video programs. There's the 12 key patterns. There's letting go, a very good one to see. They're all free. I decided at this time just to put everything up on my YouTube channel, Carol Talbot, for free. So if you go in the playlist, there's about 3 10-part programs there. So Iffy, I'm going to pass back to you in just a moment. So I'm just going to close. I'm just going to close here. And remind you of the power and potential that you all have within you to see the upside of the downside. And I always remember when I was at school, there was said to be a magic formula. It's called alchemy. I don't know whether any of you have heard of alchemy, and I know I enrolled in an alchemy program because it dates back, you know, thousands and thousands of years, and some of the most famous people in history were alchemists like Einstein, Newton. But I always remember the alchemy was really about turning lead, like a low or base metal, into something more powerful like gold. And I remember at school, my science and maths teacher said, "Load of rubbish, Carol, there's no such magic formula that's going to turn lead into gold." But what I've discovered is that it may not be a literal transformation. It's about making transformations inside ourselves. These are the transformations that count, particularly at this time. And I always say our presence, whether at this time it be online or in person or over the phone. Our presence should be a present, a gift to others. So tap into that potential that you have so that you emulate being the upside of the downside, because you have all that potential inside of you just waiting to be unleashed. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much. And my thanks to MENA Speakers, my thanks to Sana. Thank you so much for hosting this.
Thank you so much, Carol. That was such an amazing session. Personally, I learned so much, and I really hope applying the tips for a lot of us would lead to better lives, even as we go through these extraordinary times. So if you want to book Carol for a session, for speaking, you can just simply send us a message, info@mena-speakers.com, or just visit our website, mena-speakers.com, or any of our social pages, and we'll be happy to connect you with Carol. We have 3 webinars coming up. The next webinar is with Julie Lewis, who joined us. It's an exciting webinar called The Resilience Advantage. It's on the 2nd of May. We're really excited about that upcoming webinar. We also have another webinar with Nada Sabri. That webinar is Coronavirus is Not the End of the World. He delves a bit into what you can do for your life, for your business, that would set you apart even during this period. And then we have leadership in the time of disruption and crisis. This is a webinar by Ron Thomas. So we really, really look forward to having you guys at our upcoming webinars. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Carol.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.